Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Colts Cover 2 podcast. I am IndyStar Colts insider Jim Ayello, and I'm joined, as always, by fellow insider and co-host Joel A. Erickson. Joel, I'm going to say a lot of stupid words tonight because my brain stopped working over these past 3 days. I'm very excited to do this podcast because I think there's a lot to talk about, but I am a little slap happy right now, I think.
Well, I mean, it does make for draft weekend makes for a long weekend. I was like this in the middle of about the fifth round, and then I hit my second wind.
See, I hit one last night. It was weird. It was like 1 a.m, and then I started writing something, and I was like, oh, I'm good. But like during one story, I was dying. It was weird, but yeah, no complaints. I love what we're doing here, and I'm excited to talk. I just was like, yeah, I realized at one point, like, I was reading a tweet, and then I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I wasn't even reading the words in the right order. So that was... Well,
if people remember, there was like a 3-tweet span in the middle of the, like, right when 3 guys came off right in a row that I didn't get a thing right. I didn't get anything right. There was 3 terrible, awful tweets.
That matches up right in a row with was it right in the Colts pick 3 tweets or 3 picks in a row in the 6th round, because I was like flustered in that moment. I was my hair was on fire. I was like, they're picking again. Here comes another pick.
Well, and also they traded Quincy Wilson in the middle of that.
That's true. That's right. So there was like, yeah, there was a wild like sequence of events that I think Chris Bauer was just having a little fun with us. So
and it came out in terrible fashion too, because it came out with like the Colts just suddenly were on the board at 2-11, and they said, and like I saw the first report I saw said, or like the first thing I saw was the Jets have traded their pick to the Colts, and there was no for another pick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I instantly thought Quincy Wilson.
Yeah. Well, that's what, and this is the fun part you and I were talking about before we started this podcast, was just like, man, it definitely seemed like Quincy was destined to be traded based on the signings they made, the draft picks they made, and then you're like, well, where's the most logical situation? It's the land of misfit Colts. It's the New York Jets.
But then there was like it felt like a 5 to 7 minute span while they were trying to get the pick in.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, I don't think Wilson was out there. It was just that they traded the pick for. And I was trying to find out, but I couldn't find out it was him. And so, like, right about the time we realized it was him, they also picked Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah, the replacement pick.
And so then it's like, we were lucky. We'll let some podcast listeners into some newspapering right now. I had a pre-written Quincy Wilson gets traded story.
Yeah. Wisely done.
But I had to slide a cornerback pick in the middle of that, into the middle of that story. And by the time I had finished like updating stuff, they had already picked Desmond Patman.
Right.
Who, I got to be honest, like, I know he's really big, and I know he played at Washington State. Yeah. Right.
Yes. Is that all you know? Is that all you know right now? Because I'll admit right now to you that I don't know very much about Isaiah Rodgers. I was doing the Patman stuff, and I was still trying to finish up an Eason thing, and I was like, okay, I'm trying to, and then so I did not learn much.
And right about the time that I had finished updating what I was going to do initially with the trade story,
yeah,
Patman was off the board, and then they picked some guy from Michigan,
mm-hmm.
Who I really didn't know anything about, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, he's just like a special teams ace from Michigan, so I don't think we were expected to know who that was.
And then I said he was a safety because the TV said he was a safety.
They did, yeah.
The Colts said he was a linebacker.
That's true.
So I looked it up, but he was a linebacker. But he was 220 pounds, so you just like, what's going on? Anyway, we're kind of starting at the back half of the chapter.
I know. We can go to the front because we actually haven't done a podcast on day 2, but it was wild. But actually, before we start, we'll go pick by pick, and then we'll kind of give overall impressions of everything. But I want to ask you to do something you're going to absolutely hate. Are you ready?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to make you give an opinion about this draft.
You're going to hate my answer even more than that.
No, I already know what your answer is, and I'm gonna push past it. I'm going to say you can't cop out and say we have to wait and see.
No, you have to wait and see. You do.
I know. You are no fun. You really are. There's people all over the place putting up grades and making fun of the Packers for their terrible draft. And can you at least confess that you think the Packers had a terrible draft?
Yeah, I do. But
So there are extremes you're willing, like if you have like they're terrible, you're good, or if it's amazing, you're good. But right now the Colts didn't fit one.
Here's the thing, though. Like, the weird thing is, like, I said, yeah, I thought it was terrible, but immediately the first thing that popped into my head was, well, if Jordan Love's a Pro Bowler for 10 years after Rodgers retires, then I'll think it's a great draft.
Yeah, of course, but no one will remember you said it was bad because that'll be 4 years from now.
Yeah, but that's you just. I'm sorry, everyone who says this, it's not fun, but they're right. Like, you don't know.
That's true. You're right, but I'm guessing you would have thought, if the Colts drafted, say they drafted Jonathan Taylor in the first round and then drafted J.K. Dobbins in the second round, you would have been like, well, wait a second, right? That would have been bad.
I would have been confused, but you would have asked that question. I've been like, well, I got to see how it plays out.
All right, what if in the third round they drafted like Anthony McFarland?
If they just drafted
straight running backs,
nine running backs.
Yeah, you would have. I would make you have an opinion on that. Yeah.
Well, that one I would have been like, well, okay, this seems wrong.
This seems wrong. So, I mean, was there nothing visceral for you? A gut reaction to the whole draft? You liked? You didn't like anything? We can get it. Like I said, we'll get into individual. But I thought maybe you would have a kind of a like, okay, this was a very different Ballard draft overall than what he's done in the past. So I was wondering if you liked it or if you didn't.
Well, so it was a very different Ballard draft, and I was a little puzzled by it.
Okay.
For just because you're sort of used to him going for the big guys and stuff like that, but then he said at the end of it today or yesterday, one of the days when he talked, that when they got to the end of the season, they thought about well, the thing we really need is explosive playmakers, and I was like, well, yeah,
it's true.
And in reality, what we've been doing this whole time is saying they need explosive playmakers, but they're probably not going to do that because Ballard loves offensive and defensive linemen so much.
Right.
And so this was just sort of an acknowledgement maybe to me that he's willing to go off of that if the evidence says they need playmakers badly.
Yeah. I wonder if they were watching film, he and Frank are watching film, and Frank looked at him and was like, listen, I get it with the linemen, but I need some guys that can go get it. You know what I mean? Some playmakers. I wonder if Frank just looked at him and was like, seriously. I mean, look, come on, help me out here.
And I think and the other thing is I think the description that Frank Reich gave of Michael Pittman today, and we can just sort of seamlessly transition.
Yeah, do that. Michael Pittman, first pick of the draft at number 34.
Into pick by pick. Which is funny because I don't think he's the headline maker out of this in the moment.
Really?
No, I don't. I think people were more interested in the fourth round pick and more interested in the second pick.
I don't know. I think the Easton stuff will cool, but we'll get to it. Go ahead.
I mean, this weekend, I think.
Yeah.
This weekend specifically, the fourth pick and the second pick got way more play than the second pick, other than the first pick, and the first pick is probably the most important.
Yeah, so why do you think that is? You think it's just because everybody was like, they have to go receiver, and they did, kind of a thing?
Yeah, it was expected. Yeah, it's exactly what, people don't react to things that are expected. They react to surprises.
Okay, so the reaction was tempered, but the pick was appropriate, I think.
100%. And
yeah.
what I started with here before I went on a rabbit trail was Frank Reich was talking about Michael Pittman, and he was talking about he's a big guy, but I like the way he moves. He's not necessarily jukey, but he moves well. His feet move much better than a big guy. And when you've got a guy like that, and he said that about he's been trying to get that in the offense for a while. That's exactly what he said he wanted out of Devin Funchess last year before he shattered his collarbone.
Right.
So this is a receiver like this for Frank Reich is. It's his white whale. He's been trying to get this for a long time.
Yeah, I love the fit, and I actually think it was really interesting. I can't remember. We didn't get a chance to talk about this. We did talk about it in the last podcast, but to kind of recap, we had a pretty strong suspicion based on the sources we had with the team that they did not try to trade back in the first round. Those were confirmed by Chris Ballard. Yesterday, yeah, right after day 2, that they didn't try to trade back at all into round 1, and we learned that Chris was sitting back eating some popcorn while during that last part of the draft. And I thought the really interesting thing about the Pittman pick for me was they were trying to trade back out of 34. We heard reports of it. They were definitely interested in doing that. And then nothing had blown them away. And then Cincinnati picked T. Higgins at 33. And I think at that point they were like, we can't afford to let one of these top tier receivers go off the board without getting one because there's only a few left. And so I thought, in terms of need and in terms of what they were going to do, I actually think, again, going against Chris Ballard's instincts of trade back, get more picks, he was like, you know what, we need this. We're not going to have that many opportunities to get a true playmaker like Pittman. And to be honest with you, if you look at the rest of the second round, I think there's Claypool, there was the who's the little Penn State kid, Hamler, yeah, there was Mims,
yeah, but the NFL told us that Mims was not a part of the top tier like we thought he was.
Correct, exactly, 100%. I agree with you on that. And so, and Chenault was the other one, and you and I both kind of agreed that was that kind of an awkward fit for the Colts. So, I just kind of think
actually, if you want to get me to rant on something right now, I've got we just jumped into one. So there's this thing that happens after the draft where people are like, they talk about, man, he really fell, or I'm trying to think of what the right sentence is, but the reaction is well, a bunch of people passed on a player who was rated much more higher than he was taken, and it was like, no, he wasn't. He was rated exactly where he was taken because every team in the NFL passed on him until he was taken there.
I don't know. Is that true? I mean, sometimes team needs factor into that. You've heard GMs before talk about oh man, we were surprised this guy was even here, and fell. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is difference in the board, but I think if you get the guys who fall to the back end of the second round, that means just about every team has had a chance to either have them or go get them.
Yes, I agree. And the Denzel Mims thing, I think you're right. I think that kind of spoke volumes. Just that I think the media was higher on him than turns out the NFL was.
Yeah, it's specifically for me. It's specifically the guys who go in the late second or in the third, and people had talked about that, or some of them even end up in the fourth.
Right.
But people had talked about them as possible first round guys, and they're like, well, everyone was just sleeping on them. No, at this point, the whole league has said no.
Yeah, multiple times. No, I totally agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. And so, I mean, to get back to the Pittman, it's a great point you make. But to get back to the Pittman thing, I think that exemplifies what you're saying is that there just weren't that many of these guys left. You know what I mean? These upper tier, upper echelon receivers. And I think Ballard was like, we got to go get one right now. And I think the Colts, not only because they need playmakers or want more playmakers, I should say, but because T.Y. Hilton did just come off the most injury-plagued season of his career, and he is past 30, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of Paris Campbell. We all like Paris Campbell. The Colts love Paris Campbell, but we don't know yet. And so you got to put another bullet in the chamber essentially at the receiver position. Otherwise, you might have nothing there.
Yeah, absolutely, and you kind of have to address it in the draft, honestly.
Yeah, it's getting harder in free agency. I think you're right.
The lesson of the last two classes of wide receivers, and maybe Robbie Anderson turns into something more than he's been. But in terms of the guy the Colts need, a guy who can take over for T.Y. and be a legitimate number one.
Yeah.
The way T.Y. took over for Reggie, those guys have not been available in free agency recently. They just haven't.
No, it's true. I mean, I think the last guy that we saw that ended up being a legit number one receiver that was a free agent was Allen Robinson, the last one that just went.
Allen Robinson. Yeah, definitely Allen Robinson.
And that was 3 years ago. And there were a lot of questions about him because of the ACL. So that's the only reason I think he got to free agency. Otherwise, Jacksonville wouldn't have let him go. I mean, the Cowboys paid Amari Cooper $100 million to make sure he didn't get to free agency.
Yeah, it's and the guy everybody wanted last year. This was a sneaky thing of the first couple rounds, the first 2 days. The guy that everyone wanted the Colts to get last year was Tyrell Williams.
Oh yeah, the Raiders guy.
The Raiders drafted 2.5 receivers in the first 3 rounds.
It did. 2.5 is a good way of putting it. Even though I love Lynn Bowden.
Because Lynn Bowden, they said Lynn Bowden was a running back, but he's sort of a
quarterback and receiver.
Yeah,
love that guy.
He's a lot.
But yeah, you're right. They did. They went out and got Tyrell Williams. They went out and paid him the money, and now look what they're doing.
And after 1 year, they were like, "Man, we have to completely overhaul our receiver room."
Yep. Well, Antonio Brown had a little something to do with that, but yeah. To be fair, but yeah, Pittman was here. Okay, so here's the only thing I will say: if there's a downside to Pittman, is that, and maybe I'm wrong, but the way I look at his skill set doesn't scream like wide receiver 1 to me. Does that make sense to you? Like, he screams like a very reliable wide receiver 2, which is, again, a great thing to have. But I don't know what you think. He's not like a hyper athletic. Like, you're not looking at like Odell Beckham. You know what I mean? Or
Right. Okay. So here's the thing, though. I think that there is a certain class of receiver that's really only like 7 or 8 deep.
Yeah.
In the NFL. Those are kind of the guys you're talking about, like the like, I don't even think like they should be thought of as number 1 receivers. They're like something above that.
Right. These are guys like, yeah, like, I mean, if you're looking at Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, these kind of guys.
Yeah, like there's those kind of guys are like, I think there's like, probably like there's a handful of them.
Yeah.
And like, I'm honestly not even sure Amari Cooper's in there.
No, I think you're probably right. Mike Evans is maybe somebody I think is probably belongs in the conversation. Tyreek Hill is kind of a unique brand of it, but I think he is.
Right. And
Michael Thomas.
There's a lot of number 1 receivers who are something a little bit less than that dominant,
right,
and still very, very productive and important and good to have on your team.
I think that's what I mean when I say that Michael. I don't see Michael Pittman becoming Julio Jones. I you know what I mean?
Right.
But I see Michael Pittman maybe becoming actually Allen Robinson might be a good comp in a weird way.
Well, and I think the thing is, and this is really not just me talking about it. This is basically everybody I read. The thing about this receiver class was there were starters galore. Mm-hmm. There were all kinds of starters to find, but everyone said there's not like the elite guy, like the truly elite guy, which is why no one went in the top 10.
Yes, there wasn't Julio Jones in this draft. I thought CeeDee Lamb was supposed to be kind of like that guy, and then he fell to 17. So when I watched Jerry Jeudy just play college football, because like I'll just be frank with people. Like, I don't really have time to watch enough film on every prospect to have deep, incredible like film studies the way like like Matt Miller or like the real draft analysts do. James Jeremiah, those guys. So like a lot of my opinions are based off of just my clinical obsession with watching college football. And Jerry Jeudy is a guy that, like, from watching college football, I'm like, that guy's incredible. But for some reason, he went 15th instead of 4th. You know, if you're a truly elite player, you go 4th. I'm sorry, I got the Twitters open, and I have a change of subject for you. I just want to compliment Desmond Patman, who we will get to as a 6th round pick. But Desmond Patton got drafted into the NFL today and is shooting his shot. He just tweeted at Zendaya, "What's good?" That's it. That's all he did. Do you know Zendaya? Are you not? Are you there?
He's Spider-Man's girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. She's got 17 million Twitter followers, and he just tweeted at her, "What's good?" the day he got drafted. I just want to applaud him. Like I said, it's a good day for you. If he's feeling himself a little bit, he's shooting a shot. I just appreciate it. So, sorry, I needed to get that off my chest. I just saw it and I was just like
2,000 word feature from Jim on Desmond Patton coming Tuesday.
Hey, if Russell Wilson and Sierra, why not Desmond Patton and Zendaya? You know, that's all I'm saying. I'm sure Desmond Patton feels the same way. So, anyway, no, I like, again, I totally agree with you said about Jerry Jeudy and all that stuff. I just that sidetracked me a little bit. I just, I'm already a big fan of what we're gonna get from Desmond here. So yeah, here's the other one thing I wanted to ask you, because we had a couple of the scouts talk today about the guys who looked at Pittman. Frank Reich talked about it. Are you a believer in if I have a short, fast guy, then I need a big, tall guy, or you know what I mean? Huh?
No.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that either. And a few of the scouts talked about, like, hey, we didn't really have this big, tall guy. And, we didn't have, Devin Funchess. And, like, this replaces that. And I was like, yeah, just get a good receiver. That's all I really care about.
No, I don't feel that way. But, like, you have to, people who listening have to, like, think back on, like, my background of growing up and watching the Packers, who have had, like, it's like 25 years now of just clonable 6'1" receivers of varying levels of speed.
Right.
They just like they have these clones that come out that don't have like any like some of them are a little faster, like the Jordy Nelsons, and some of them are a little bit stronger, but they're all the same guy.
Yeah.
And so like I don't think of it that way. I just think of having playmakers.
That's how I feel too. I agree. Yeah.
But I am a big believer in if you see a receiver's body type and you say, I know how to bring the best out of that.
Yeah.
Which I think is what Frank Reich is thinking. Then I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And I think he's got a very clear vision for this big-bodied player who can move better laterally and change direction quicker than most of them. And I don't think we've ever gotten to see it because they haven't had that guy. I mean, in theory, they had that guy last year, and then he shattered his collarbone.
Right. I just mean like, and again, this is maybe not fair, but if the places were switched and Jerry Jeudy was sitting for them at 34, I don't think they're going to be like, he's not that tall, and we already have short, fast guys. So.
Oh no, that's true. Like what happens then is if they pick a different player, then they're like, well, we really value this route running and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like it's different.
Right.
They just value different stuff out.
Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I know, and everybody said Phillip Rivers has a long track record of working with big receivers. But I remember I got a chance to talk to Antonio Gates about that, and he was like, yeah, he just had big receivers and it worked out, but he would have made it work with other guys. Like he had short receivers he made it work with too. So, like I remember.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is that when we were talking to Chris McGaha there at the end, I asked him about Desmond Patman, and he was like, athletically, he's a very similar player to Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
So for the Colts, this body type and prototype is sort of, it's what they want. I think it's what Frank wants.
Maybe there's a success rate with that. Like the taller, fast guys maybe end up like being more successful on a percentage basis or something like that. I don't know. Like you have these physical tools you can use. Like if you are taller and can overpower a corner, you're just more likely to be better, kind of a thing. You don't have to do other stuff well, or as well, I should say. I don't know. I don't know anything.
Frank's 3 years in San Diego. I can't remember who was there, but I feel like all of Rivers' receivers are tall.
They were, but like if you remember, there was a year where like remember Stevie Johnson with the Bills? Oh yeah. There was a year Stevie Johnson was with the Chargers and just like lit it up, and he's not very big. I think he was like 6 foot. And like I said, to me it's like I'm gonna look up the numbers, but I just don't think there was like you have to be, I don't know, a giant guy.
Yeah.
Actually, he didn't. Yeah. It wasn't like it was 10 games, but actually 10 games he had 45 catches and 500 yards. So it's a pretty good year.
No, I think you're right about that. I don't think, and actually, who backs us up on that?
Who's that?
Reggie Wayne.
Right. Good one. Yeah.
Last year, no, I mean he said it with his mouth last year. Mike Chaplin and I found Reggie at the combine last year when they were looking for another receiver, and asked him if you had to have guys that had so-called complementary skill sets.
Right. He said no. I'm hoping.
Reggie was like, nah. I think he swore and said nah.
Good.
He said you just have to have playmakers.
Yeah, I like being on the side of Reggie Wayne. That makes me feel happy.
Yeah, but like I think with this one, I think it's one of those things. Like I think certain coaches have certain body types and styles that they go, okay, I know how to make that work.
That's fair. I like that. That makes sense to me.
And I think just from the way Frank talked about Devin Funchess and the way he talked about Michael Pittman tonight, like this is a thing that he goes, I know how to make this body type work if I can find this player.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's move on to the. I don't know. I'm going to say this is the most controversial pick of the draft for the Colts, but maybe not. I don't know. Eason, we can get there. But so let's give the background.
Yeah, it's the most controversial.
Okay. I'm going to give the background on the pick because, again, I think I find this part fascinating. And then you can kind of give your evaluation of what you think of it. But the background of this pick is that right after they make the Pittman pick, the Lions take DeAndre Swift, a running back, and then back-to-back picks. I think the Patriots took Kyle Duggar, or it was Xavier McKinney and then Kyle Duggar, I think, were the next two picks. And then right then, Chris Ballard started to go, hey, Jonathan Taylor might fall here. And might start slipping to a place where maybe I could get him. What do we think? And essentially, it was Jim Irsay who came in over and said, you guys have been talking about this guy for a long time. You clearly love him. Go get him. And so they made a deal to get up to 41 with Cleveland. And I think this is an interesting part of it as well. He said there were teams behind them that he knew wanted Jonathan Taylor. I am convinced that they jumped in front of Jacksonville because of what's going on there with Leonard Fournette and all the drama unfolding there. I think he knew that a division rival wanted Jonathan Taylor, and he said, we love him, we're going to go get him, and we're not going to let you have him.
Who else was in that? Who was the other team that picked? Do you know?
I can look it up. Wait, what do you? Who else in front of the Colts, you mean?
Yeah, it was Jacksonville and who?
I will check that for you in just 1 second. Here we go. Sorry. Second round pick. Oh, no, I have the Colts up. Sorry, I need rounds. Oh, toggling late. Okay, so real quick, I hit 1. Man, I am just brutal tonight. All right, 2. Here we go. It was the Texans at number 40, and then is that what you're asking about?
No, because the Colts picked him at 41, right?
They picked him at 41. Oh, from 44, they jumped the Bears, and the Bears weren't going to take him.
Okay, so you're right. It's the Jaguars.
Yeah. That is my thought.
I should say it's either the Jaguars or it's
well, like Tampa Bay at 45. There's absolutely they were going for him for sure.
Right. So there's a couple teams that might have been thinking, "Hey, we're going to make the same jump the Colts are," and Chris Ballard was like, "How about I just make sure that can't happen?" I bet Tampa Bay and Jacksonville are the two that make the most sense.
Yeah, Tampa Bay at 44 for sure. I'm sorry, Tampa Bay at 45, and then the other one you could maybe argue would be Atlanta.
I would argue that Tampa Bay was definitely one of them because Tampa Bay ended up taking a player named
Keyshawn Vaughn, yeah, the Vanderbilt running back.
Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah.
And they were in the range to take some other running backs.
For sure.
So I think Taylor was probably their guy.
I agree. There was a lot of people making that prediction pre-draft that Tampa Bay was going to get him. And then I guess, like I said, 47, Atlanta only has Gurley for 1 year. And then 49, a lot of people were connecting the Steelers to running backs for a while. I don't think they ended up getting one. Maybe late they did, but anyway, he said there were teams, multiple behind them that wanted him. But again, I think that was a brilliant move. You didn't want to see Jonathan Taylor for the next 4 years in Jacksonville, and they made sure that didn't happen. So
especially if you believe in him the way it sounds like they did.
Exactly. So Colts have Jonathan Taylor. They have Marlon Mack. Initial thoughts on that whole situation?
So there's a part of me that wonders if they're not better together, if they would be better on their own.
Okay.
Just because Marlin last year had his best season, it's not really just last year, it's the last 2 years. He's been the bell cow. He's been the guy who has the ball all the time and has been very successful in it. And Taylor is a guy who's always been the bell cow.
Right.
Jonathan Taylor, from the moment he stepped on campus at Wisconsin, got the ball unless they needed to give him a rest.
Yep.
That's just it.
We're talking 300 carries a year, folks.
And I think this is where we throw this in. I said earlier that I don't necessarily watch film, but I watch college football. I'm from Wisconsin. And so I watch a lot of Wisconsin football. I would say I probably watch 8 to 9 games a year. So I've probably seen Jonathan Taylor more than any prospect I've ever covered in the NFL. I think that's probably true. I maybe if there was, I can't remember. I think I've had an Auburn guy that I covered and covered at Auburn and saw every game he played and then went in. But Taylor is a guy who always had the ball, and he's got this element to his game where there's a bunch of these 3 to 5 yard carries, and then one of them doesn't look like anything's there. It's a 60-yard touchdown. and it's not like a build-up. It's not like a build-up over the course of the game. It's just like if you're playing Jonathan Taylor, you just know he's going to break out at some point. And it's got to be a terrible feeling because you know it's going to happen sometime, but there's no way to know when.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like he's going to wear you down and then do it. It could happen on the third carry. He just gets the right crease or something. So there's part of me that wonders that. But there's also been so many two-back systems, I feel like, recently that have been pretty good that I think can probably make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to do this because you could almost... You could do this kind of weird example picking anytime, but you look at the 2 Super Bowl teams. Neither one of those teams had a number 1 running back. Kansas City certainly didn't have one of those, and San Francisco used 8 different running backs all year. So I know Raheem Mostert got a lot of pub around here, but they used Matt Breida. They would have liked to use. They used some Tevin Coleman before he got hurt. I'm sure. I think I'm missing somebody. There was somebody else in that range. So that was a team that was very successful cycling through running backs, and so. That committee, that RBBC kind of thing works for certain teams. The Saints, for sure. The
Saints really hit on something with Ingram and Kamara.
Yeah.
I don't think either Mac or Taylor are going to catch the ball the way Kamara does. But just in terms of running attempts, the Saints have done a very, very good job alternating carries like that.
Well, you mentioned the Saints and Mark Ingram. Look what the Ravens drafted J.K. Dobbins today. They still have Mark Ingram.
To do the same thing.
Yep.
There's been a lot of teams that have done that recently. And honestly, for people who are worried about Jonathan Taylor's carries, they're about to go down in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. No, he's not going to get 3. So I want to give you guys this. He got 300 attempts per year. He actually had 926, so slightly over. And he went for 1977, 2,194, and 2,003 yards consecutively in 3 years. He was the Big Ten rushing champion 3 years running.
If he had gone back for his senior year, he would have shattered the NCAA rushing.
Yes, he would have been the all-time leading rusher without question. So there's that. And then also, I think one of the scouts today said that he is an athletic freak. And he is, or he's a genetic freak, I think is what he said, and he is. I mean, the one I've been kind of touting on Twitter was that he's got the 10th fastest weight adjusted speed score in combine history. He ran a 4.3940 at 226 pounds. That is stupid. People shouldn't be able to do that. I was just thinking about that. I was just like, because I'm not ashamed to say I weigh about $170, and I was thinking if you added 50 pounds to me, my 40 time would probably be in like the 9 to 10 second range. So to picture a man running a 4.340 or 4.3940 with adding 50 more pounds to what I currently am is astonishing to me.
Well, when they do it, they add muscle, Jim. It's not like just.
I know, you're right. It's not just like a sack of potatoes that they're throwing on, but it's still like at home, do that exercise. Like whatever your weight is, add or subtract, and then imagine running that fast. It's insane.
Yeah, he would have. He had 6,174 yards in his college career.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, the all-time NCAA rushing leader is Ron Dane at 7,125. So not only would Jonathan Taylor have broken it, he would have broken it in game 5.
Yeah, he was insane. And so the production is there, the athleticism is there, it's all there. And so I guess the question becomes he's not going to struggle. He is going to be a star behind this incredible offensive line in Frank Reich's system that, like I said, I've been saying this too. It seems like they're going to try to run for 3,000 yards this year after getting to 2,000 last year. They signed Roosevelt Nix. Even Trey Burton is a better run blocker than they had before at the second tight end with Eric Ebron. They're going to maul some people. I can imagine some games this year where Phillip Rivers throws the ball 18 times. I think they're going to do that to people. So the question is, the value. I guess the question is the value. Is a second-round pick worth it on a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who is, I think you and I both agree, an upgrade over Marlon Mack, but is it significant enough to have used that? And and obviously use that pick on him, and in the context of knowing that Marlin's contract expires after this year.
Well, when you said that, and after talking about the Saints, it can be.
Okay.
When the Saints got Alvin Kamara and realized that when the Saints drafted Alvin Kamara, for people who don't know, they did not know he was as good a runner as he is. They thought he was a pass catcher. They found out he was a good runner. But what happened when they had both of them and could put them together and do what you just said? It's something you said that sparked this in my head. Everyone has talked about Phillip Rivers' tendency to throw interceptions.
Correct.
Drew Brees also has a tendency to throw interceptions, or had one.
Yeah, he did at one point.
But what they've done, what the Saints have done, and what's got them in the playoffs the last 3 years and had them be a Super Bowl contender the last 3 years, is they've been so good at running the football that Brees' attempts have fallen precipitously. I think the first time that they were together, they felt like 100 in a season.
Yeah, 2017, 673 to 5. I'm sorry, yeah, 673 to 536. So you're talking about 140 pass attempts fewer.
And what else dropped? Interceptions.
Yeah, down from 15 to 8.
And so Taylor Mack backfield.
Ooh, I love this point. This is a really good point you're making.
A Taylor Mack backfield, if you have guys that are that dynamic together, if you can have a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara scenario, you can pull down on River. You will make Phillip Rivers a more efficient quarterback. You just will.
That's Philip. I mean, Drew Brees again. Is Drew Brees the same accurate passer Drew Brees is? No, but Drew Brees led the league in completion percentage 3 years running: 72%, 74.4%, 74.3% in the 3 years that Alvin Kamara has been there. And obviously, Mark Ingram wasn't there last year, but they kind of replaced it with Latavius Murray.
Yeah, Latavius Murray had a very good season last year.
For sure.
And Brees, and for anybody out there who's right now who is thinking, what are you talking about? Drew Brees doesn't throw interceptions. Drew Brees threw 22 interceptions in 2010.
Yes, he did.
That's at the height of his powers.
Oh, he threw a ton of picks. I mean,
2011.
19, 17, 15, 18, 17. These are all different years I'm looking at.
He threw a lot of interceptions, and the last 3 years when they've had the running game, it's been 8, 5, and 4.
Yep. And the 4, to be fair, he only played 11 games. But still, good point.
his yardage has dropped a ton.
Yes, fantasy players are like, hey, this stinks about Drew Brees. But in the real-life NFL, they've won, hold on. When Drew Brees starts, they've won 24, 32 games and lost 10. They're 32 and 10 in these last 3 years with Drew Brees starting. So that's pretty good. Winning football, obviously. Like I said, I think this is a really good point. Joel, I think you should write this story.
I'm going to write this story.
It's a good story. No, it's a really, really good point. Again, I don't think they necessarily have the Kamara type player. They don't have a Kamara type player. I don't think. Actually, it's a good way to talk about Jonathan Taylor now. Is the next thing is he a pass catcher? Is he a 3-down back? At Wisconsin, he definitely showed some improvement in that final year in terms of what he could do as a pass catcher, as a route runner. There are still some questions about him in pass protection, but he's one of those guys that he's so smart and so good at kind of everything he does that he's one of those guys, if you just teach him the right stuff, he'll figure it out. And so he's got to work on that, and he's got to work on those fumbles, obviously.
And so, like Taylor's a pass catcher. This is another thing where my knowledge of Wisconsin helps. Like, what they did this year was they didn't necessarily just throw him swing passes. Like, the stuff that they were doing was wheel routes up the side. It was angle routes. It was the kind of stuff that NFL backs do, and not just the check down. Like, he can. I cannot remember which game this is for the life of me, but the play is burned into my head. He had 5 receiving touchdowns last year, and one of them, it was either a touchdown or close to it, was he went up the sideline on a wheel route, and the ball was behind him considerably, and he just kind of reached back with one hand and just smoothly grabbed it and went it. And it was like,
yeah.
And like the announcer, I remember the announcers going, "Wow, Jonathan Taylor can really catch the ball." And I was like, "That's not just catching it."
Yeah.
In a way, it reminds me of. So, I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and like we were trying to figure out who Jonathan Taylor reminds us of. And the guy that I think he reminds me of is a better Mark Ingram.
Okay. Yeah, and Mark Ingram could catch the ball. So.
But the Saints didn't realize that for like the first 4 years of his career.
Right. That's true. They didn't use him that way at all.
And it wasn't because he couldn't do it. It was because they just didn't think he could, and so they never threw him the ball. Which is like, I don't know if Wisconsin didn't think he could do it. I think Wisconsin just doesn't throw the ball.
Yeah, I read a story about him where he was essentially like, "Hey, I need to work on this. Like, I need to become a better route runner and better." And so the coaches, give him credit at Wisconsin. They were like, "Okay, yeah, we'll use you like that. Let's try that. Let's that could be effective." And they gave him. Not only did it make them a better team, I'm sure, but that made him more pro ready. You know what I mean? And
his running style is a little bit like that too. He's better than Mark Ingram, but it's a similar style.
He strikes me as like a guy like, honestly, I don't know why, but he strikes me as a guy like, this is an unfair comparison and a different sport, but a guy like LeBron in a way where you're just, just like, remember like there were times about LeBron, they were like, yeah, he's good, but he can't really shoot the three. And then like during the winter or like during the summer, he'd be like, okay, I'm going to make sure I can do that. And then like, there'd be times where like, yeah, LeBron can shoot the three now, but he can't really post up. And then he'd go in the summer and be like, learn 18 post moves, and then he'd come back. And they're like, yeah, but he doesn't really have like a good jumper when somebody's in his face. And then he, he just like, it's one of those things where he's just like, oh, I'm not good at that? Okay, I'll just fix it. That's kind of what reminds me of Jonathan Taylor with the catching and the fumbling and the other stuff. So, it's a good.
So
go ahead.
Hitting that's like something like that's what they should be trying to do with these two. And it sounds like what they are trying to do. I don't know what this means for Jordan Wilkins, but Frank Reich said today that they're probably going to move into a spot where it's Taylor and Mac together.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounded like Jordan Wilkins died tonight. That's what it sounded like to me.
I think Nyheim Hines is still going to have a role.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I think that they've got a 1-2 punch now.
I agree. So now let me get your thoughts on a Marlin Mac. I mean, given what you just said and how effective a 1-2 punch could be, maybe you're making the case for a Marlin Mac extension where most people wouldn't see one.
Well, I mean, if it's a reasonable extension, and if he's okay with doing it, like an Eckler type extension.
Even that would be a lot. I don't know. We'll see. The Colts have a lot of guys to pay.
$1 million is not a lot.
How much is it?
It's 4 for 24.
Well, didn't he get like 18 guaranteed though?
Maybe, but if it's 4 for 24 with 12 guaranteed, then it's not that much.
No, that's what I think that's a very good comp. And I looked at their productions a while back when Eckler signed his deal, and they actually have produced very similar in very, very different ways, but very similar total numbers. So I actually think that's a pretty good comp in terms of payment. But we'll see. I think I feel bad. I feel bad for Marlin, and I think the Colts understood that he was probably feeling a little down. That we learned that Frank Reich texted him to tell him, "Hey, this is going to make you better. This is going to be good for all of us." And Marlin, it sounded like he embraced it, but it was a tough day. He was the lead back for the Colts, and now he's not. He's at least in a committee, if not the second fiddle. So it's tough for him. There's no doubt about that.
No, it's tough. I don't think any running back wants to be in this position, but Jonathan Taylor is very, very explosive, and that's what the Colts kept saying tonight, and sort of what just sticks out in my head is the way he can rip off really, really long runs.
Yeah.
And they wanted to add that element a little bit more than Matt gave them last year.
All right, let's move on to the third-round pick. This is the one that I think has been least talked about, given the I think it got overshadowed, obviously, by the first two and then the one that came afterward. But it was Julian. I almost said Justin Blackman. That's a throwback. Julian Blackman, the Utah safety who I think this was, I think the skill level is there, and I think he might have gone higher had he not torn his ACL on a non-contact play during the Pac-12 championship in December. And so, obviously, he didn't get to go through a lot of the pre-draft stuff that other guys did, and his stock took a hit. But I think the Colts had seen enough on the game tape to say, we need this guy.
Yeah, it's an interesting pick. I was a little puzzled by this. They said they might not have him until October. I think there's a chance it might be longer than that.
Oh, yeah. I think, those are, with the 20 ACL, I always feel like add a month or two to what they say.
And so there's a chance that he's not really a contributor as a rookie, but they must really love what he can bring. And what he can bring is sort of what we talked about when we were doing mock drafts and stuff.
Yep.
That versatility, being able to play now, he's not the sizable guy that we were thinking of.
No.
But he also, I think, gives you an ability to play cornerback, like actual cornerback, and not just tight end cornerback.
He played corner. I mean, for a season. Yeah.
Years. So it's a little bit different than like I don't think you line up Kari Willis on a wide receiver. You might be able to line up Julian Blackman on a wide receiver if he's able to come back healthy from this ACL, which I don't think is. I think the Colts downplayed that. I think that's the biggest thing here is that ACL.
The good thing for him on that is that it won't be. There's no need to rush him. They have plenty of depth in the secondary right now. They have safeties they like with obviously the Malik thing we can talk about in a different time. But Malik, Kari, George Odom, Roland Milligan is back. They have safeties they like. So I think that there won't be any like major rush to get him back. So that at least for him is good.
It'll be interesting to see how they use him whenever he's healthy enough to play.
Yes, I'm very excited to see. You want to speculate on that a little bit because I think we did, right? We did a little bit with Matt Eberflus with Jeremy Chin and Kyle Duggar when we were talking about those guys in our mock drafts about Matt Eberflus was really creative with three safeties and really creative with using guys in matchups on certain matchups they liked, and that's why we liked those two guys.
I think what a guy like Julian Blackman does, or if it would have been one of the bigger guys, I think because there was a point after people started getting hurt last year where you would see very specific personnel groupings.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's probably a little bit of a tell. And I think it's easier to disguise if you don't have to use those personnel groupings and you can just run people out there and you don't have to pull them off the field in the secondary. So I think that Kari can do a lot of that stuff. Julian Blackman can do a lot of that stuff. Kenny, obviously, if he's in the slot, is very versatile. I think if you don't have to put a big nickel on second down and then you bring in coverage free safety on third down, I think if it's different, I think it helps you. It helps make it harder for quarterbacks to read what you're doing based on your personnel.
I agree. And we've seen, just to see, we've seen Blackman, we talked about matchup. He does have the ability to play that kind of center field. I've seen some of the highlights of him blitzing like a bat out of hell. So he can kind of do a lot of the things. You wonder if you asked this question again. It's one stuck with me for a while. Chris Ballard at the end of the season press conference with him, just about how the defense fell apart without Kenny Moore. And what a replacement would be like, and they have TJ Carey now, but I actually think that maybe Julian Blackman might be the guy that long term they see as we can get him on the field a ton, but if Kenny Moore ever went down, we could we can use him there.
You play him at nickel, yeah, because honestly, Carey's a stopgap.
Yeah, so I actually think that's exactly. Carey's a 1-year guy, maybe 2 if things go well, but yeah, 100% I agree. So I was wondering if that was what they were doing. Was trying to give themselves a little Kenny insurance, given what happened to them last year. So, All right, let's move on because we've spent a lot of time and we haven't even talked about the quarterback yet.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. We can kind of go through the back half of the draft a little faster since we weirdly started there. Jacob Eason. I don't think anyone saw that coming. It was very funny because Chris Ballard the night before, was asked about quarterbacks and said, we're not picking, we're not going to force it. We're going to wait till we see a guy that we want and we believe in, and that guy hasn't come yet. And then 12 hours later, they got a guy. And now he did temper expectations in his kind of post-draft press conference saying, actually, I shouldn't say it. He didn't kind of temper expectations. It almost seemed like he killed him a little bit. He was just like, this guy's not the Messiah. He's a 4th-round pick only. It's not like he was the first overall pick in the draft.
He said he has to make the team first, which is...
Yeah. Woo, right? I think he went pretty far to make sure we didn't have, the wrong, unrealistic expectations on Jacob Eason. Really? You know what I mean?
Well, he did his best, but unfortunately, I don't necessarily know that the fan base is going to follow his line of thinking.
I agree. I think people are going to get excited about him, and there's good reasons to. I mean, I think there's a lot of good reasons to. Like, I mean, again, you look at this guy, he's 6'6", he's just a monster. He's got a huge arm. I mean, just a cannon. Guy, and you watch some of the good highlights of him, and it's just him rifling things, not just deep passes, but into really tight windows. And that's some really good stuff. He's maybe a little bit more athletically gifted than I think some people would like to give him credit for. But, there's a lot of weaknesses. We can get to those in a minute, too. That's why he obviously fell to the fourth round. But I just wanted to make sure we reiterate what Chris said, which was that this guy is competing for the third spot on the team with Chad Kelly. Now, I think he's going to win it because they invested a fourth-round pick in him. But I think that they're trying to temper expectations and say, hey, we're giving him at least a year behind Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett. And if things go the way we think they will with Phillip will be back for year 2. And now we have a backup quarterback in Eason.
Yeah, it's interesting because I tweeted Ballard's quote right after the pick.
Yeah,
we're not there yet, and I saw several people say, "Well, he's lying." He wasn't lying. They weren't there yet with taking a guy that they were like, "This guy is the guy."
Yep, they didn't. They could have moved up. I don't know how many more ways that he could say it without using his name, but he said it. They could have moved up for Jordan Love, and they decided not to. Okay, that's true. So
they could have taken him at 85. They could have taken him at 44. They could have taken him they were willing to let the rest of the NFL have their shots at Jacob Eason. That's true.
You're right. They didn't even trade up. Not only did they not trade up to the first round, they didn't even trade up in the fourth round. They were like, all right, he's here. And I don't think Chris will ever admit this, but they took a long time turning in that card. And he did mention that there was kind of a lively debate about that pick. So, in the draft room, I mean.
So it's not the same as them drafting like the quarterback of the future, obviously. It's a lottery pick. It's a flyer. We're taking that he was graded higher than everybody else they had at that point, and they said, "Okay, we'll take it, and we'll see what happens."
I think it's hard for me. The fourth round. I think we went through this. Like, do they draft a quarterback in the first round? What does it mean? Draft a quarterback in the second round? What does it mean? Draft a quarterback in the third round? What does it mean? Like, and that fourth round is really like, I think those first 3 are like, okay, they believe in the guy in some form of, in varying degrees. In the fourth round, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a flyer, but it's a guy they definitely think has upside. Like, you know what I mean? The fourth round is not a throwaway round by any means, and so it's not like this is a 7th round pick.
Well, he's got tools. He's got tools for days.
Yeah. Exactly.
He was a 5-star prospect. They don't give out 5 stars to just anybody. He's big. He's tall. Frank Reich said he thinks he has the best arm talent in the draft. So we're going through the strengths right now. But there's the negatives.
Yeah, why don't you go through those? Because, I mean, some of the things that I think you see on film with him are just, you see the talent and you're like, what are you doing? Why?
Well, it's like the stuff that people talk about is like decision making and processing.
Yeah.
We can float this out. I don't know when this will be on the website, but I talked to his quarterback coach at Washington, and he said that part of what he thinks is some of that is just that Jacob Eason has not played a ton of football yet. He started for Georgia as a freshman and started for Washington last year. But there was, I would say, some upheaval in between there, which just because he was at a different school, but he also got hurt.
Right.
He's only thrown 782 passes. He only threw 782 passes at the college level.
Right.
So, and Frank Reich said the same thing. Like he's a guy who probably, honestly, Jacob Eason probably should have stayed where he was. He probably should have stayed at Washington and come back for another year and tried to prove he was the guy. He's going to have to try to do that in the NFL now. And some of the stuff that goes with that is what his quarterback coach at Washington, who's down in Missouri, was saying, is just some of the making decisions reading defenses, that sort of thing. He's just got to do more of it.
That makes sense because like the knocks on him, like we said, are it's the reading defenses, understanding schemes and protection, like defensive schemes, and then protections and how to protect against certain blitzes and things that he just didn't really do a great job of in college. Not awful by any means, just didn't do a great job of. The one that really frightens me though is the one I've seen. I feel like too many quarterbacks just never overcome is that he makes poor decisions under pressure, and he doesn't have a great escapability because he's not super athletic, and that worries me.
Well, and like, I mean, what people always say is that the one thing you can't coach out of a quarterback is if they can't handle the rush.
Yeah. It's harder. It's harder for a pro-style quarterback, a guy who's not, Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson, who can't just create on the fly, which is not what Eason does. It's harder when there's pressure and they can't just spin out of it and go crazy and create extra time. Like he can't do that. That's not.
Well, so the way that they're going to need to combat that is to do what Rivers has done, and really this is why him sitting behind Rivers is perfect because, you get the ball out.
Yeah, quick release. I agree. Yep.
You get the ball out fast. The thing he's got to learn, like we're talking about reading defenses and making all that stuff. That's the stuff he's going to have to improve at the most because if you can't escape the rush, you got to get the ball out of your hands.
Correct.
And so he's going to have to get better at knowing where to go with the ball. The goal is to have him there around for a couple of years and give him time.
That's what I'm saying. I think, like I said, I think 2 years is what they're hoping of just maturation in that offense.
So yeah, it's an interesting pick, but he's Ballard said it outright. He's not the Messiah. I don't know that it's really hard for me to see them getting to the end of training camp and saying we're keeping Chad Kelly and cutting Jacob Eason.
All right, so let me ask you. This is a team that won 7 games last year. Obviously, the quarterback play didn't help, but they also had some other issues. We all know that, injuries and other things. But you look at these first few picks. Now, there's no doubt that Michael Pittman is going to fit a huge need for them and contribute from day one from what they've said, and I believe it. But you have Jonathan Taylor, who I think is an upgrade over Marlin Mac, but I don't know that he's a ginormous upgrade over Marlin Mac. Then you have Julian Blackmon. Yeah, man, every time with the Justin Blackmon thing. Then you have Julian Blackmon, who's not going to play, presumably until November or December. And then you have Jacob Eason, who's not going to play. And then you have Danny Pinter in the 5th round, who we'll get to in a minute, who's not going to play, not going to start. And then you're in the 6th and 7th round picks where you're not getting starters anyway. So there's you could look at this draft in this way. They got one guy who's going to make a immediate impact in a position they didn't have anything, which was Pittman. They got a minor upgrade or, again, whatever, an upgraded Taylor. And then
philosophical change. We hit on this earlier.
What's that?
Philosophical change for the quarterback.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm just saying, like in the draft, did they do a lot? Did they do a lot to improve themselves? Again, it's one way of looking at it. I'm not saying I come down one or the other. I'm trying to play, I guess, devil's advocate here.
Well, see, this is the problem. This is where Jim wishes his co-host would be less stringent on that. We have to see how it plays out.
No, these are factual things. Blackman's not going to play. Eason's not going to play. And
no, I know, but here's my counterpoint. There are a lot of teams that went through this draft and they picked 4 guys, and everyone's like, okay, perfect. Need. And you know how many of those guys are going to play? 1.
Okay.
Because they're rookies.
But they had a chance. Eason has no chance. Blackmon has no chance.
That's true. Yeah, I think you can make that argument. I think you can make the argument that maybe you hammer your needs. But like some of the needs that I think that people talked about, like this was a bad class for edge rushers.
Right.
This is why the Blackmon pick was puzzling to me, though, because it felt like there were a lot of those versatile type safeties.
Right.
And they can use that.
For sure. I mean, if he was healthy, I would say, great, he fits right in, but he's not.
So yeah, I think you can say that. But just knowing how rookie classes tend to go, I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing.
No, again, I don't think it's a bad draft. I guess I'm only looking at it through the lens of immediate like 2019 versus 2020 upgrade, and I don't
obvious upgrade.
Right, and I don't think there was a huge change there. But I think anyway, I guess
I think they probably hope that the upgrade comes from the free agent quarterback they signed and the giant defensive tackle they traded
agreed
for.
100%. You're not wrong about that. I think maybe you're right. Maybe the changes the things they did in free agency and via the trade market maybe enabled them to look a little more toward the future in the draft, which is ultimately what the draft is for the future. So again, it's just one way of looking at it. One question I wanted to ask. So we'll move on.
I think there's validity to it. I think there's validity to the idea that it wasn't a see hole, fill hole type of draft.
Right.
Obvious holes that needed spots. I think there's validity to
that. Actually like we've talked about what an un-Ballard like draft that this was in that way, that it was just they were just taking players that they thought were the best at the spot. It was a Ballard like draft, like a best available type of thing.
Right.
All right, we'll try to move a little quicker here. I think there's a lot to go over with Eason, but I've written quite a bit about it. Greg Doyle wrote about it. Our columnist IndyStar, you're writing about it now. A nice feature on him. So plenty to talk about and look into with Jacob Eason as we go. So we'll move on real quick to the guard, the 5th round guard, Danny Pinter, who they picked in the 5th round. Fascinating background, this guy. Pretty much played tight end at college, and then his coach is like, we kind of need a tackle. He's like, okay, I'll play tackle, and put on a bunch of weight. And then now he's coming to the NFL, and Chris Ballard says, yeah, he could probably play some tackle, but he's going to make his money playing guard and center. So this guy is just showing all kinds of athletic versatility, and Chris Ballard loves this guy. Just absolutely loves him.
Well, and I don't remember if, he really likes him. He talked about trying to trade up for him.
He did. He said he tried for about a half an hour trying to move up for this guy. He loves his small school guys, man, I tell you.
So the interesting thing is, our Ball State listeners are going to hate you.
What'd you say?
Our Ball State listeners are going to hate you for saying it's a small school.
It is a small school. Come on, we're not talking about we're not talking about like a Power 5 conference here. Anything outside the Power 5, I'm going. That's like, yeah. I mean, I'm saying Danny Pinter and Isaiah Rodgers from UMass. Those are small school picks.
So were you on the Pinter call?
Yes.
Okay. So the interesting thing to me, and this is just wild to me.
That one was, yeah.
Danny Pinter knew last year that he probably wasn't going to be able to play tackle in the NFL, and he would probably have to move to guard.
Yes.
And so he would spend his time after practice.
Oh yeah.
Going out and playing guard just to get familiar with it.
After practice. This guy.
Which, dude, that is so forward-thinking. It's insanely forward-thinking.
I love that. I just love the pure, like, oh, my team, I'm a tight end, but my team needs a tackle. I'll go play tackle. I mean, come on. That's fantastic.
Well, I think there's an unspoken thing there, and I actually asked this flat out. And he sort of agreed with me that he probably wasn't going to make the NFL as a tight end.
I agree, but I don't know. Just still, like, he came up an offensive playmaker. I mean, a guy with the ball in his hands, and you'd be like, no, put my hand in the ground, I'm going to maul people. It's pretty cool.
Ballard clearly likes him. I think he's definitely doing it. I think he's definitely doing that. I think the hope is that Danny Pinter is going to be a starter someday.
I agree. I think they're hoping they might have gotten, and I'm just guessing because they're not going to replace Quentin Nelson, and I don't think they're replacing Ryan Kelly. I think they maybe are hoping, in best case scenario, they found Mark Lewinsky's eventual replacement. So. Yep,
and thinking that in the worst case scenario, they've got a really, really good backup.
Yeah, he can back up all the three guys I just mentioned. So.
Which, again, I think it's important to note with some of these picks. It's a 5th round pick. That would be a perfect. That's perfectly fine.
Oh, yeah. If he's a 5th round pick that turns into a good backup, that's great. If he turns into a starter, that's a huge win. So, all right, let's move on to Robert Windsor, who's a guy, I got to tell you, this one confused me a little bit. The defensive tackle from Penn State, 6'5", 290, which is so funny to me because everywhere I've read about him, when they said 6'5", 290, everybody goes, yeah, he's small. I'm like, who is small at 290 pounds? But all right.
Well, defensive tackle are supposed to be 300.
But I will say that Colts scouts today kind of could turn me around a little bit on him, just saying that he is maybe more athletic than the reports that I read on him are, and that he's actually quite adept at slipping past guards using technique and just some quickness. So I don't.
Well, he's more of a fit for this defense than other defenses, I think, is what's going on.
Okay, because like I said, the reports you read on him are not glowing. That is for sure.
The thing that he does is, and I saw several people tweet this right after the pick. For those who are listening, Jim wrote that story, and this is about the time when neither of us could focus on all of the picks, and we have to start trading off.
Yes.
But the couple of tweets I saw initially were that he was the kind of guy who you get in a one gap scheme and you have to penetrate. So he's probably more valuable to the Colts than a lot of other teams.
Yeah, they call him a wave player. So again, you're not even. I mean, they're drafting him. And again, when you're drafting in the 6th round, you're probably not getting starters. But they're saying this is a rotational piece.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and this is where I have to ask you: Is he? Do they see him as a 1 or a 3?
It sounded like Were you on the call with the scouts?
I was, but I was half paying attention.
Okay.
I was working on updating something else.
I believe it sounds like they see him as a 3. And he fluctuated a lot in college of 290 pounds, 315 pounds. He gained a bunch of weight, lost a bunch of weight to try to play different positions. So, but I think they're gonna try to see him as a 3.
Fond du Lac.
What's that?
He's from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin.
Yeah, he's a Wisconsin boy. So
I no longer think he's just a developmental player. He's going to be a superstar.
Great. I love there's no bias in that opinion at all.
Fond du Lac isn't just Wisconsin. Fond du Lac is north of Baraboo, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
I got family there.
That's more my side of the state.
Okay. Well,
to be fair, the part that's not that my part of the state is better.
You should do your part for Colts fans and just tell Chris Ballard, draft guys from where I'm from and they'll become stars. That's
not true. That's not true at all. Because Fond du Lac isn't even really where we're from, and where I'm from, the only NFL player of any note from anywhere around us is Jim Leonard.
Okay, yeah. Well, good player. Good player.
Well, actually, you know what? It depends on if I can count Stevens Point or not, which is about an hour away.
Hey, that's where my sister went to college.
But Ryan Ramczyk is from Stevens Point.
Jordan Zimmerman played baseball at Stevens Point. Good athletes up there.
So if I can count that, then it's Ryan Ramczyk. But honestly, what I would think of as my Wisconsin, it's Jim Leonard, and that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, unless you have other Robert Windsor thoughts, we'll move on.
We can move on.
To Isaiah Rodgers, the corner from small school UMass, with all of our UMass people listening here. This is another guy that I feel like the Colts maybe like way more than other people. Again, go ahead. Sorry.
He's fast.
He's super fast.
They drafted him because he's super fast.
Did I read 4.240 at one point? What's that?
His agency found an ex-NFL scout in the area for his pro day. His pro day was canceled for the coronavirus, and they found an ex-NFL scout, so they would have someone with a more scoutish hand time, and he had him at 4.28 on 110.
That even if it was a little quick, I mean, fine. A 4.3 flat would be insane. So yeah, this kid's quick. 5'7", 170, UMass, and actually good ball skills. It sounds like he got 11 picks and returned 3 for touchdowns because once he had it in his hands, you can't catch him. So yeah, a 4-year starter. I mean, a lot of things that you'd like about him. It sounds like the Colts were maybe higher on him than the 6th round pick would indicate.
He's small though.
Yeah, little dude.
He's not the typical Colts corner. I assume he's probably in the nickel.
Yeah, I think that was referenced by by the Colts scouts tonight, was saying that he kind of if he's going to play out or play corner for the Colts, it'll probably. They said he had the ability to play in and out, but I think that they probably more see him as a nickel.
But I think the other thing is once you get to the 6th and 7th round, you pick guys that you think if they're going to make the team right away, they're going to make it on. If they're going to make the team, they're going to make it on special teams initially.
Yeah.
4-2-8 is Chris Milton. Like that's the gunner role. You know what I mean? That's why Ashton Doolin was so good there last year.
Yeah, he's fast.
He's fast. So I think it's a gunner. I think it's another return man.
I was going to say, do you think he's got return? Do you think? I mean, obviously it's Naheem Hines' job, but competition or at least a backup?
Well, I'm ashamed that I didn't look this up earlier.
He did return kicks and punts in college, yeah.
I think very well.
I don't have stats, but I know that it's part of his game. But yeah.
So yeah, they picked. I mean, he's interesting on defense because of the ball skills, but initially it's going to be the return.
I agree.
And the gunner, especially the gunner.
Move on to the last. Or is this the last? No. This is the. Yeah, this is the middle.
I don't think it's going to be most. I just pulled up his stats. I don't think it's going to be mostly. I don't think it's going to be return man at all. Really, I think it's coverage.
Okay.
I think he's a good guy. He only had one touchdown in returns as kicker punt.
So Rodgers was the first of that flurry of picks. Was that the Quincy Wilson trade, or was that the next one?
Yeah, that was the Quincy Wilson trade.
So yes. Rodgers was the replacement. Quincy Wilson corner. Yeah. Okay. So, real quick on Quincy, give us like 1 minute.
It was time.
3 seconds.
It was probably past time.
It was past time. I felt bad. I think I've said this on the podcast before. I talked to him, and I can't remember what corner they released last year. And I remember asking him, and I was like, do you kind of wish that was you? And he was just like, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, and I was like, I'm trying my best to be here. It's like, okay, I get it. Like I've thought about this on the podcast before. I thought he worked his butt off to try to get on the field, at least in certain, at least to my eye. And I'm not there every day for practice or anything like that. But
I think the other thing I'd say, and we're past the minute now, but that's a pretty significant draft miss for Ballard.
Yep, 2nd round pick. And the third, that was right now we're talking about a potentially disastrous 2017 draft. At least the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, because you get some really good picks there on the backside of it.
Yeah,
but
Grover Marlin. I think is that Grover Marlin, Anthony, all in that same draft.
Yeah,
Anthony Walker. Yeah, so that's a really good back end. But right now you're staring down Malik Hooker, which has been good, not great. And then you're talking about Quincy Wilson, Terrell Basham, Zach Banner are 2, 3, 4, and that hasn't been good at all. At least not for the Colts. Terrell Basham has found a home in the Jets, and Zach Banner has found a home with Pittsburgh. So,
yeah, I think it's still true that Chris Ballard has not picked a player with the Colts who's not in the NFL right now.
Yeah,
which is hard. That's hard.
It's very hard. I mean, yeah. After we're in year 4 now, so 3 years worth is impressive. By the way, did you see? I'm sure you're looking, but did you see that Thaddeus Moss is going to go play for Washington alongside Adrian Peterson, who used to play with Thaddeus Moss's father?
Oh, that's fun.
That's the best. All right, middle.
Also, he'll probably play with Thaddeus Moss's son.
That would be awesome.
In 20 years, when Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson are in the same backfield.
Yeah, and Adam Vinatieri's kicking for him.
I don't know.
We don't have to get into that. 6th round pick, middle after Isaiah Rodgers, was Desmond Patton. He looks like one of those project picks to me, just with maybe just super raw, in my opinion. I mean, he has more production than that in college, but he's 6'4". He ran a 4.
Well, he has production because he played at Washington State.
Right. So
they only throw the football.
6'4", 4'4", 40. So that's all appealing trait-wise, but got a lot of work to do learning offenses, got a lot of work to do running routes, got a lot of work to do, in fact, actually just using his size correctly. There's a long way to go for Desmond Patton, but obviously the tools scream, impact guy with it's 6'4", 440, but, we've talked about this, but we've all gotten excited about the tools before with a Deion Kane, and we saw how that turned out.
Yeah, it has to translate. So, but in the 6th round, that's often what you're doing with receivers. You're taking tools,
right? Nothing wrong with that. And he seems like I said. I mean, we got a chance to talk to him. They seem to like his character. He seems like a good kid. Guy likes to work and try to improve if he can. So I just like to me. I think you and I both talked about this. They needed to add probably 2 receivers in this draft just to fill out the depth with interesting guys. And I thought obviously they did that with Pittman and Patman.
The first time today, I thought that Pittman and Patman was funny.
Yeah, you're right. I actually haven't even said it that way before. You're right. Pittman and Patman is funny, and they had Pinter. This is very interesting. We're unlocking the Colts draft. So yeah, I mean we can move on unless you have any other Desmond Patton thoughts.
I've got 0 because I did the 2 bookends and didn't do anything on Patman.
Yeah, Pat. Like I said, I did the research, but again, you see a lot of these 6th and 7th round receivers who are just big and toolsy, and that's what he is. So he's got good coaches. Mike Rowe has got a good reputation as a receivers coach. So does Kevin Patullo now, who's in a different job but is still with the Colts. So he's got every opportunity to kind of come along, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But they have depth now with Ty and Paris and Pittman and Pascal. Hey, a lot of P's, and so yeah. That's where the Colts are at receivers-wise. And we'll get to the final pick of the draft, Jordan Glasgow, the linebacker/safety, we'll just say, from Michigan.
He will play linebacker for the Colts, but what he will really play for the Colts is special teams.
Really good special teams player, yeah.
And actually, this is something I'm going to want to ask Frank or Chris at some point in the future. It feels like here in the last couple of weeks, if you put Rodgers and Glasgow and the signing of Roosevelt Nix together, there's 3 signings there that have, or there's 3 acquisitions there that have like core special teamer written all over them.
Yeah,
and I wonder if there's we need better players on teams. I think they're good in kick coverage, but maybe they looked at it and said, I know the Colts felt like they were good in kick coverage, but I know that in Rick Goslin's well-respected special teams rankings, the Colts were like right at the bottom.
Well, I think that was mostly driven by Adam Vinatieri's.
Well, I know how he does it. It's 24 categories, so it can't be completely pulled down by the kicking.
I looked at it. I thought it was.
That's crazy because if it, especially in a year when it was that bad.
I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a few months now since I've looked at it. And it gets hard to believe too because they were so good in the return games. Obviously, the Naheem Hines numbers boosted everything up.
So yeah, I think. I just wonder if they're trying to boost the special teams.
That's good. No, it's a good thought. Actually, I think it's very interesting, and maybe does that signal a little bit. Like it's funny. You look at this draft as a whole, and we talked about how he likes to build from the inside out, and maybe he already has built right. So the building blocks are on the inside, and now he's on the out part, and so now he's doing those skill positions on the outside, and he's doing the special teams, which he hasn't really had a chance to do because he's been too busy building an offense and a defense.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is kind of the close to the end. Obviously there's no end to the job, but like he's poured quite a bit of resource into the rebuilding that defense.
And he's in his 4th year too. He's in his 4th year, and this
team is in his image now.
It's all his team. Yeah. A couple of undrafted free agents.
Yeah, go through that list. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, the one that everyone liked was Rodrigo Blankenship.
Yeah, the Georgia kicker who actually had a really great college career. I'm a little surprised he wasn't drafted since I think there was a kicker drafted, one kicker and a punter drafted, a long snapper was drafted.
There were several kickers drafted, actually.
Yeah, okay. Did you hear what I said? A long snapper was drafted.
Did the Patriots do it?
Yeah, pretty sure.
See, that's... Bill Belichick loves special teams more than he loves his own mother.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, the Dolphins, but that counts. That's Patriots light.
Yep. So he's in there. I think a lot of people, I reported he was given a $20,000 bonus to sign with Indianapolis, which is significant.
Yeah.
It means that there were other teams interested and they had to pay him a little bit. There were some people I saw who were like, well, that means he's the guy. I'm like, $20,000 is not, it's significant for a UDFA. It's not significant enough that you're like, that's it. I think he has to beat out Chase McLaughlin. I think he's the 2 trying to beat out the 1.
I agree. I think he's one of those guys that comes into camp as the 2, and he has to have a great camp combined with Chase having a bad camp to win the job. And if not, the Colts will probably do everything they can to give him a real audition so other teams can look at him.
There's 5 names. I'll throw them out there in case people know who they are. South Alabama cornerback Travis Reed. Carter O'Donnell is interesting because he's an offensive lineman from Canada.
That is interesting.
And anyone who's Canadian is interesting in football. There's a wide receiver from Southern Mississippi named Mike Harris, a South Dakota defensive lineman named Cameron Klein, and there's a Georgia Southern safety, Donald Rutledge Jr. I don't know enough about any of them to speak. O'Donnell's interesting. I think I saw somewhere, I haven't been able to verify this yet, but I think I saw somewhere that he got a fairly significant signing bonus. The guy that I think that a lot of our listeners will know, because he's local and because I wrote on him in February before the Combine, is Kendall Coleman, the Cathedral product. He's been working with Robert Mathis. The Colts picked him up. And it's interesting because in the story that I wrote about him working with Mathis said outright, he wasn't really teaching him to get drafted. He said it's easy to get in the league, it's harder to stay in the league. I'm teaching him how to stay in the league. He's been working on pass rush moves with Robert Mathis right up until the coronavirus shut everything down. And it'll just be interesting to see how much that tutelage plays once we get to camp.
I will be interested. It'd be fun to watch him. And that, it's one of those things that if you talked about a Chris Ballard draft, that was strange. He didn't draft an edge rusher. He usually does. I think that's interesting considering the uncertainty in that position, which people might be going, what? But you never know what Kamoko is going to come back in terms of coming back from that injury. And again, Van Banagoo looked good last year, and Justin Houston probably has something a little bit left in the tank. But there's a really real possibility in my mind that we're going to end the 2020 season and go, man, they have a pretty big hole pass rush. So, or could, I should say. So, like I said, I'd bring in a guy like that for camp. It'll at least be fascinating because I think they're gonna take a real strong look at him, given that they didn't draft anybody in that position.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason they didn't draft anybody edge rusher is that this was supposed to be a weak edge rusher class.
For sure, and yeah,
particularly weak in. And we talked about this before, so we're just not particularly weak in the sort of speed guys that Ballard usually likes to pick.
Right, the guys like Kamoko and Banagoo.
Right.
Those like bendy, real fast guys. So yeah, I will. But yeah, like I said, I think he'll have a shot. There's no doubt about that. At least getting on the field and making a good impression. So yeah. Any other big thoughts about the draft? I mean, you covered the undrafted guys. We kind of talked big picture already a little bit about what this means for the Colts. I mean, in terms of like impact in 2020, quarterback for the future. I think we've kind of hit a lot of the big picture stuff. But if there's something else we're missing, I'm willing to open the floor to you here.
The hard part is that my brain's a little shot now.
Yeah, we're almost at the midnight, which is actually better than the first podcast we recorded. I think it was at 1:30, and I think I finished up last night around 2:30. So we're doing better.
I've gone to bed at 2 and 2:30, and probably will not. I might go to bed and just wake up early. I might try to get the sleep on the front end this time. But yeah, so this is we're doing okay, but we've talked a lot about it, and I think when you go through the positions and sit, I think there's some spots that I still think are thin. Safety, defensive end. Ballard kind of hinted at this. They're going to throw a lot of guys at the other defensive end position opposite Justin Houston, and hope that competition creates a rotation that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's possible. They have some really talented guys there. It's just a matter of that, working.
Well, and it might be a combination of Danico Autry and Kamoko Toure, Danico more on rundowns, Kamoko on other downs. It could be a combination of Banagu and Toure. It could be a combination of a lot of different guys to get to what they need to get. But he is right that they do have a lot of guys who played a lot of NFL football for them that they can use at that spot. It's just interesting to think of. There's not like a clear, obvious can-do-it-all replacement there.
No. Yeah. And so I guess I wanted to. We talked about Marlin Mac being adversely affected by the draft and what happened. Is there anybody else that you saw as a kind of a clear loser in this draft? I think the winners are pretty evident, obviously. Like Phillip Rivers is probably jumping up and down right now in terms of the weapons he got. But any clear, I don't know, maybe other winners or losers. I actually just thought of another winner, but go ahead. If you got
Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly lost.
Chad Kelly lost. That's a good call. Sorry, all the swag fans out there, but it might be coming to an end.
Chad Kelly lost.
This team is not carrying 4 quarterbacks, though he could stay on the practice squad. It's possible.
I think that might be it.
I was going to say, who did I have as a win? Oh, Mo Alley Cox, actually, and Trey Burton I had as wins.
No tight end?
Yeah, they didn't take a tight end, and I thought they might try to take a young developmental guy.
Well, so again, the theme is these positions that we keep bringing up that we thought they might draft and they didn't. The theme is they were in the category of thin considered by most people.
Correct.
Tight end was supposed to be the worst position group in the entire draft.
Don't tell that to the Saints, who traded the entire draft to get Adam Troutman. They pulled like a Ricky Williams light.
Oh man.
No, I mean, like I said, I think there were some pass-catching guys who were interesting in this draft that they could have maybe brought along, but they decided that I think that sounds like a vote of confidence for Burton, returning from injury, doesn't it? I mean, they have no direct replacement now. Like, if you're looking for the Eric Ebron guy, that is
not a guy. Yeah, it's Trey Burton.
That's Trey Burton and nothing behind him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and again, there's Ballard's warned us a million times the last couple of weeks. I feel like a lot can change between now and training camp and now and the beginning of the season in terms of rosters, but. Right now, it's Burton or bust in terms of like the go-get-it pass-catcher guy.
Maybe this isn't a Colts thing. This is a non sequitur a little bit, but the Saints draft, as a beat writer, they make 3 picks. At the end of yesterday, they trade all of their last day picks. I think it was 4 in all to move into the 3rd round,
yeah.
And they actually won that trade by the value chart. Which is hilarious. But even more hilarious to me is that if you're us and you're a beat writer, there's a rhythm to these things, right? And the draft gets hard when the rhythm gets thrown off, like for us, like when they make 3 picks in a row and trade a former 2nd-round pick.
Right.
Well, the Saints had no rhythm. They were just supposed to just lay around until the EDFAs come. And then right at the end of the draft, they trade a future pick to get into the 7th round to take Tommy Stevens from Indy. That's the Indy tie. That's what I was trying to get to with this. And it might be the worst possible thing that can happen in the 7th round where the team jumps back in and drafts someone with a story.
Oh, yeah. That's bad for people.
That's bad for writers. It's probably fun for the fans, but it's bad for writers because Tommy Stevens, for those who don't know, is sort of a Taysom Hill type.
Right.
He can do a lot. He was Taysom Hill at Penn State. And so he's obviously a story in New Orleans where Sean Payton has been talking about when Breeze is gone, he wants to make Taysom Hill the starter. And now they've acquired a potential Taysom Hill replacement.
Or co-Taysom Hill.
Or they could put all 3 of them on. They could put Breeze, Taysom Hill, and Tommy Stevens on the field all at the same time and just get rid of them.
I'm not going to put it past Sean Payton to try that once during the season.
Anyway, it was just funny to watch because I still talk to a lot of Saints writers. So 2 of the Saints writers were 2 of my closer friends in this business, and they were making fun of me all day while I was covering actual major picks. And then right at the end, they just get this gift from Indy that's just like, hey, you have to write about this. Like, he's actually someone you have to write about.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy too. I mean, I liked your story on him, and I hope that makes sense for them. So yeah, and as a writer, like it's one of those things where you want to have stuff to write about, but by the end of the third day of the draft, you're just kind of looking to try to get through everything. Make sure you've covered all your bases, cover all the things you want. So when it's a 7th round pick, you're like, okay, we'll get a quick story up on that guy, and that'll be it. And then when it turns out to a guy like Tommy Stevens, it's a much longer process. So yeah.
Well, actually, we can let podcast listeners know this. You and I were cheering against Prince Teo 1-0.
Oh yeah, no, didn't want to do that.
Because the longer it got down, the more it was going to be. For people who don't know, he's got like an incredible backstory. He's a tackle from Auburn, and the further you got towards the end of the round, it's like, oh no, they're going to draft him, and there's going to have to be like a 30-inch story.
Yeah.
That we're just going to try to put together on the fly while all these people are talking to us. It's just going to be impossible.
Yeah, and it's just a recap of what everybody else has ever said about him. But it's an incredible story, and Indy hasn't heard it, and you'll have to write it. It's just, but like I said, it's one of those things where it drives me crazy rewriting somebody else's like story. It's just I hate those situations where like
he went like 1 or 2 picks before the run of 3 started.
Yeah. See, like that's like another one. Like Javon Kinlaw would be another one of those guys where I would just been like, man, everybody wrote about Javon Kinlaw during this draft process and what he came from, and it's an incredible story. But if the Colts were to have drafted him, I'd be like, great, now we got to do it again.
Oh, I thought everyone had written about him at the Senior Bowl or the Combine.
Yeah.
And then
yeah, there was
like
an ESPN
this
story
week,
that came out. Yeah,
there were like 6 more stories.
I know. Exactly. I just want to, and then whatever team drafted him was going to have to do. Their beat writers are going to have to. Was it Jacksonville, right? No.
Yeah. It wasn't 1 or 2. No, it was San Francisco that had Kinlaw.
Oh yeah, San Francisco. Yeah, that's right. Of course.
It was not one. It was the pick right before the Colts traded up to 211.
Yeah.
That Prince came off the board.
Yeah.
You texted me, and then the next thing that you and I were texting about was, wait, why is the Colts logo on 211?
Yeah, that's no, that was terrifying. So no, like I said, you don't want to resist a good story, but you do want to resist a good story that's already been told 100 times. So, so yeah. Well, I think that's it. Like I said, I think that was a pretty thorough post, kind of just debrief of the draft. We will have another podcast for you. Probably, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. It probably won't be next week, but maybe the week after or something like that. After maybe we soak in some things and let things mellow a little bit and really kind of pull back and see what the team has done. But
we would like to do one next week, but I will not be available. So
yes, you're free to tell people why, because that is good for. I mean, people should know, I think.
Well, I'm on furlough next week. I took my first one for. We're supposed to take one a month in the second quarter.
Yeah, 3 months.
For 3 months. Yeah, and I tried. So the hard part when that's going on with the draft is that you try to take it when it's going to hurt the readers the least.
Yeah.
And so I tried not to take one because there was lead up to the draft, and they were still signing free agents.
Yeah, we had 2 choices essentially. It was like the week I took one, like with like the very beginning of the month, or the week after the draft. And those, like, I took mine and you took yours, and neither was an ideal situation, but that's what it is.
Right. And there wasn't a ton of Colts news the week that you were gone, but that was also the week that I wrote the Tommy Stevens story.
Yeah. So, it worked out, but yeah.
So there's a lot for us to do right now. It's not. You don't want to be off right now. No. You just don't.
And I will say that, it's a bummer that you're going to be off and that you have to take off. So, we thank all the people that listen to this podcast and subscribe and keep us employed and doing things we love. So thank you. And Joel will be back. He'll be off Monday through Saturday, essentially next week, but he'll be back, and then he'll be back to writing good things. And you'll get to read Joel's stories next week anyway, because he'll have written them tonight and tomorrow, and so that'll be good. So yeah, you can look forward to that, and I will have some stuff for you as well. And so yeah, that's it for us. Thank you for following us. There's plenty of stuff on IndyStar.com. If this wasn't enough for you somehow, we wrote a lot of stories. We wrote a lot of stories about all these guys. We wrote some summaries about, or just kind of our feelings about the draft. All kinds of stuff on IndyStar.com, videos and everything. So go take a look at that, and we'll have more for you soon. And thanks for listening. Bye.